really appreciate you carving time to join us in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. We're in our studios, which are second to none. They are primo. Primo is the word of the day. And so is our guest. He is primo. He's the best. He's the best there is. And I'll tell you what, this guy might have been the best football player of his era. I mean, this guy put up numbers that were crazy good and led the Cincinnati Bengals to many, many phenomenal seasons, great years individually and as a team. But put up, Kenny Anderson is the guest, obviously, and he put up some numbers that were just absolutely crazy, highlighted by the 1981 season, where MVP of the league and also won the Burt Bell Award and led the National Football League in multiple passing categories. And also 1974, my rookie year. What a season Kenny Anderson had. Led the NFL, completing just under 65% of his passes back in 1974. That is big time. 2,667 yards back in 1974, big time. Quarterback rating 95.7, unheard of back in that era. And also had some ability to save a play with his legs, man. Dude could run. K.A., what'd you run the 40 in, about a 4.5?
Don't I wish? You're about 4.7.
No.
And it stayed that way for a long time because I was in my 16th year. We always had to do it in mini camp. And the only watch that counted was PBs. He goes, oh, still 4.7. All the other coaches are laughing, but PB, that was, as long as he had me at 4.7, I was good.
And, honestly, I thought PB kind of had a slow watch, really. I mean, I thought he was kind of slow, as you crossed the finish line. All I know is you were fast enough to run away from people when you had to, and you did that. You did that exceptionally well. You were tremendous in terms of buying time, in manipulation of the pocket. If things broke down, you could find a lane and climb the pocket and manipulate it and either run for positive yards in the first down or throw the ball down the football field for a first down and big yards or a touchdown or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, that's the thing about you. Not only a great quarterback throwing the football and all kinds of numbers in that regard, your legs, man, are an underrated part, and your legs and feet are an underrated part of your game. I always thought you were as mobile a quarterback as there was in the league in your time.
Well, if remember our Super Bowl league, I mean, I was 31 then?
Yeah.
81. And I was the second leading rusher on the team.
Over 300 yards, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And over 300 yards rushing and a touchdown. Over 300 yards rushing. And again, it's not design, quarterback draw, sweep, it waggle, keep the ball on a waggle, whatever. You were just creating and extending. That's even more impressive. That's a significant number of yards when you're actually making something out of nothing. The play's breaking down a little bit, and you make a big play out of it. That kills defenses.
Well, a lot of times, kind of en vogue with the Steelers back in that era was that, covered two-man, where they're playing too deep and man-to-man underneath everything. And the guy that's not accounted for is the quarterback. So if you recognize that coverage and you saw a little crack to step up and go ahead and take some yards, there was nobody there to tackle you.
So you just hit on something, recognize that coverage. I thought, to me, and I had the pleasure and honor of rooming with you for a number of years. And the thing that was impressive, really impressive to me about you is your football acumen, your mind. I mean, your ability to absorb all kinds of information. And Bill Walsh and Paul Brown obviously identified that, realized that. They drafted you and they developed you and they knew what they were doing there. But your ability to absorb tremendous amounts of information, process it quickly, and make the right decision, I thought, incredible, remarkable trait that you had that not many around the league did. What led to your ability to process and diagnose so quickly?
Well, I think it goes back that, I think, Dave, for a quarterback to be successful, individual honors are nice, but, that's the one position that you're so reliant on everybody else for you to be successful. Certainly the offensive line, your teammates, receivers getting open, the blocking's got to hold up. But, also to go into the right situation with the right coaching and the right offense. And I was lucky with Bill Walsh and Paul Brown. So, and I was also lucky that the draft was in January in those days. And there weren't all these different offseason rules. And so I was waiting to go on active duty for the Army Reserve. So right after the draft, the next week, I'm in Cincinnati, and Bill and I start working together and going over everything. And, we started, a lot of quarterback success in the pocket is your footwork. Well, we started working on that right away, looking at film. Okay, here's where your eyes have to be. Here's, what the protection, here's the weakness. This is a guy you got to have, see what's happening here. If he comes, you've got to get the ball out quickly, you're protected over here. So all of those mental things we started with right away. And so he gave me such a great base, a great foundation to work with.
And I know I heard him talk about your feet. So it's interesting you bring that up, working with Bill Walsh early on with footwork and everybody talks about, quarterback. Oh man, what an arm! What a powerful throwing arm! Oh, he's got a really good release. Look at the technique. Look at the mechanics there. And you had all of that. I mean, you could. People didn't realize the arms. I think they did, really, honestly, but it wasn't talked about with you as it was like with Terry Bradshaw or something like that. You had a gun, man. You had tremendous arm strength. When that ball came out, I mean, you could hear the lace. You could hear it, man. I mean, that ball was zipping down the football field, and you were tremendously accurate with it. I mean, a lot of guys have the football, the arm strength or whatever, but that accuracy. And Kenny, man, you would put it like, I'm going to hit you right in the chest. I'm going to hit you in your right shoulder. I'm putting it on your right hip, and it was there all the time. I remember, doing stuff with you even in the off season. Where you would want to throw some if we were at function or camp or whatever. And, man, the accuracy that you threw the football with, and I'm not talking about, 5 yards apart. I'm talking about like 30 yards apart. And you're putting that sucker right on I'm going to put it right on your nose. Boom. It's right on your nose. If you don't catch it, you got a broken nose, man. I'm putting it, on your forehead. If you don't catch it, you get a black eye, man. I mean, what led to that? What led to your ability to not only throw, with arm strength, which you had, but the accuracy that you had was second to none. I mean, multiple times you led the league in the completion percentage, and it's no mystery to me, man. You were unbelievably accurate throwing the football.
Well, I think a lot of it, luckily it's God-given ability for the football to go from here to there, and where it's going to go. And I think a lot of it, Dave, was me playing other sports. I thought baseball helped me out a lot, to play quarterback. I was a catcher. And, if you're trying to throw a run out at second, it's got to be that overhand release over the top. You don't want the ball to tail off as you're doing it. So I kind of learned that release. But I was also a shortstop. And you learn different angles to throw the football depending on what the play dictated. Basketball. I mean, think, you played basketball. Think about, all the defensive footwork that you drills that you did. All that footwork helped me in my drops and movement in the pocket as quarterback. So, I think that was, lucky to grow up in the day that I did in a small town where, just to fill out numbers, you needed everybody to play, all the sports. And, I think kids sometimes today are missing out on so much that, am I a football player? Well, if you are after the season, well, you got to be in the weight room. Then you got your 7-on-7 leagues. Then in the summer, you got to do this. And the same thing, with basketball. Just season ends, I got to get on my AAU team, all this other stuff. And I think they missed out on so much. Number one, you don't wear out on one sport because you're doing some other things and missing the enjoyment of being with other teams and other teammates, in your youth. And so I was lucky. We talk about that a lot, with my buds. In fact, I'm going back to Batavia this weekend for a golf outing for our high school basketball team and see a lot of the old guys. And, it's fun to sit around, and we have happy hour at the Moose Club one afternoon while I'm up there and tell a bunch of stories. So that's always fun.
They better get some beer, man. They better get some beer iced down because Kenny Anderson can wipe it out by himself. Can your buddies consume the adult beverage as well as you do?
There's some that can rival me, I think. So but it's it's a lot of fun. And, and then I go back and next month I go back to Augustana. And, we have a golf outing for our Letterman's Club there, and we go to a football game, so I see a lot of the old guys. And my receiver, one of my best buddies, Dave Markward.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk. Do you remember this from this game? And I said, no. And he kind of looks at me. I says, Dave, we played 36 games in college. I said, I played it over 300 more after college. I said, I can't remember everything about everything. So we have a good time with that one too.
Though you're hitting on something I think that is a byproduct of sports that is huge, and that's friends. The friends that you make, the relationships that you form, they become lifelong. I mean, here it is. All you guys are in your 70s, and you're still getting together. Everybody still makes it to reunions for college, for high school, whatever the case may be. I mean, everybody still wants to gather with each other and, maybe tell the same stories, but they're always great, man. Every time they're told they're great. Sometimes they get better, but I mean, there's nothing, people don't understand, I guess, the bond that happens when you play competitive sports and you're so reliant on each other. I mean, you're only good as the guy next to you, and you form a bond that way. And then you form a deeper, tighter bond that's like a lifelong bond. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, and I think you go back to you and I,
Yep.
and I think that was what was special about playing with the Bengals in the era we did, is that we had a very close bunch of guys. And today's date, July 8th. Well, remember, Dave, we'd already reported to training camp by now, right after the 4th of July, and we're up in Wilmington. And
yep.
we had 9 weeks up there together.
Yep.
And, today's players, they couldn't deal with that, but that was, that was our off-season program. I mean, we got jobs as soon as the season ended to get to the next season. And so, our off-season program was training camp. And, we were up there. Every day was a 2-a-day and every day was in pads. But the fun thing about it is, up in Wilmington, I remember we had a little cinder block bar about 2 blocks from campus. And after the afternoon practice, we'd get, everyone down there to have a beer before dinner. And then, we didn't film a practice until Forrest Gregg came in 1980. So after the evening meal, we had a chance or after the evening meetings, a chance to go out to the bowling alley and have a burger and a beer.
Right.
And, we spent so much time socially together. I don't think that the players have a chance to do now. Of course, there were no cell phones back in those days, and and things were different. But nobody got in trouble, and but that was just a way for us to get together away from the field, and I think made us a close team.
I agree. I think like we were talking about earlier, when you're playing in a game, and your guy playing right next to you or right behind you, and in my case as an offensive lineman, you playing quarterback, is a great friend. I mean, you want to do everything you possibly can to play at the highest level you possibly can. You don't want to let that guy down. You don't want to let those guys down. You don't want to be the guy that's like, oh man, what's with that? You can't do that. You can't be doing that. We're all doing what we're supposed to do. You got to do what you're supposed to do. Assignment errors aren't acceptable. And guys, it almost raised the bar, the level of performance, because you're not just playing for yourself. You're playing for your team. You're playing for your teammates. You're playing for your friends, teammates, coaches, organization, whatever. But most importantly, and most definitely, the guys that are lining up right next to you. And when you have that mindset, that old fist mentality, offensive line, it's five components: center, 2 guards, 2 tackles. And if you're all playing well together, it forms that big, strong, tough fist. If you're not, it's disjointed. You don't have that strength and that power. So if you all playing together, and you want to do that because those guys are your friends, and you want to do well for your friends, you want to do well for yourself, but you want to do well for your team as well. And you don't want to be the guy that is holding your team back. That's the bottom line.
Right. And we held each other accountable, and we get guys coming in that may not fit in, and And we let them know in a hurry, this is the way that we do things here. This is the way you're going to practice. And this is the commitment you've got to make to be successful. And, either you kind of become part of the group or it's hit the highway.
Right.
And Paul Brown was always good about that.
So you're a great example of a guy that obviously the sport that you made your name in and you had all kinds of success in. And I mean, like unbelievable success, like 1/10 of 1% of the population type success is football, the National Football League. I mean, you hold records in the National Football League that are going to be very, very difficult to break. So you obviously had talent and worked hard to develop that talent to the highest possible level you could, and had a very successful career in that sport. But along the way, in high school, you played basketball, you played baseball, you played other sports. You developed, like you mentioned, all these other sports helped your footwork and everything. I think in today's world, everybody's telling kids. I mean, I got grandchildren that aren't even 10 years old yet, and they're being told to specialize in sports. You just play football. You're not a basketball player. You're not this. You're not that. Man, I couldn't disagree with that more. And you're a great example of it. I did the same thing. I played as many sports as I could. And you get your body, adapts to different things. It learns different movements. It learns different things that you have to do to compete well in that sport. And some of them carry over to other sports. I couldn't disagree more with young people, young athletes specializing in one sport.
Yeah. Well, how do you know if you're 10 years old what your best sport is? Unless you try them all and have fun with them all. Yeah. But like I say, it's just we've all got kids. I've got a granddaughter that she got her school volleyball team and then goes to club volleyball team, and every weekend is a tournament, but it's in another city. And so it's hard for them. But like I say, I'm glad I grew up when I did. I'm glad I played in the NFL when we did. I think it was for us it was a lot easier. Although I don't know how Joe's going to survive on $55 million this year.
I know.
He's going to have to make some cutbacks, I think. But we'll see how that goes. And I am so excited the players make the money that they do now because they deserve what they're getting.
Right.
And salaries in the league when we, came up, they weren't that great, but neither was the TV money.
Right.
And as revenues increased, the players kept getting more of it. And like I said, they deserve what they got. I'm excited for them.
I agree. And this era of players is very respectful. I mean, I've had guys on the Bengals team come up to, hey, we really appreciate what your era did for us. I mean, you guys made the National Football League as popular as it is. You guys were in the golden era of, the popularity or forming the popularity of the National Football League. And like you say, Kenny, the networks, I mean, it just took off. Everybody, you got to have the NFL. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got to have the NFL, and it get competitive. And once it's competitive, whoop, there goes the rates. The revenues are going to go skyward. But I do think that today's players are respectful of sacrifices that were made. Maybe that's a strong word, but I mean, you talk about training camp back in the day, 9 weeks, over 2 months of double sessions, full pads every single day, and my rookie, my first 3 years salary were $26,000, $29,000, and $32,000. So
big bucks. Oh, you got
big I know. that was because of the World Football League.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a World Football League got drafted in the first round by the Birmingham Americans, and my agent saying, you got to go down there. You got to at least make it look like you're interested. I mean, they're talking like, stupid money compared to the NFL. Like, I'm not going to go down there and play in the World Football League. You're crazy. I've always wanted to play in the NFL my whole life. That's what I'm doing. I finally have a chance to live the dream. And now he said, I'm not saying you got to go down there and play. He goes, but you got to at least fool them, got to make them think that you are. And I'm like, whatever. So yeah, that's what the World Football League gave me the leverage to get up to $26,000 my rookie year. I mean, what was your rookie year salary?
$18,000.
Oh, jeez. Quarterback, $18,000. That's Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, the next year I became a starter, got 20, so that's good. Like, I always,
Crazy.
my goal going to college, I wanted to be a high school math teacher and football and basketball coach like my uncle Gary. And so I get drafted by the Bengals, and he taught on the north side of Chicago up at New Trier High School, which was a great place. And there was an opening in the math department, and I said, geez, Gary, if I go up, if I go down the Bengals, and I don't make it, I lose that job. And he said, Kenny, they're giving you a $7,500 signing bonus. He said, your first year's teaching salary is going to be $5,000. So you've got enough to make it for a year. The job will be there the next year.
Oh man, that is crazy. That is crazy. But I can honestly say that I did not. The job of playing pro football was the most fun I've ever had in my life. I mean, forget job. It's talking about, okay, what are some of the greatest experiences? What were some of the most fun-filled, tremendous experiences you've ever had in your life? Give me 5. Well, I'm going to give you 5 games.
Yeah.
I played in the NFL. It's like there's nothing like the thrill of playing at the highest level against unbelievable competition with your friends, your friends that you're going to end up being lifetime friends with. It's just an amazing mix, man, an amazing dynamic.
Well, and to be honest with you, I liked going to practice every day and trying to get better every day as much as I did the games. The games were nice in the crowd, everything, but I always liked the challenge of, how good can I be at practice today?
That's an interesting point, and you had, when you got drafted, Paul Brown was the head coach, Bill Walsh was the quarterback coach, and Bill Walsh just, he's late great Bill Walsh. He can't anymore, but I mean, he talked about you and how you were a sponge and how everything that he said, you took it all in. I mean, it wasn't like filtered out, throwing that out, that. Everything was like, whew, and you could regurgitate it, man. You could give it right back to him. And then it translated from your mind to your body, and you could do the things that you needed to do with your footwork, with your eyes, seeing the field, making the reads, and then throwing the football. It's how big a factor was being affiliated, associated with a coach like Paul Brown, a head coach, and a pass game coordinator and quarterback coach like Bill Walsh in the early stages of your career?
Well, I mean, that made my career. I mean, I think if the Bengals don't take me and I go somewhere else, I'm a kid from Augustana that was an option quarterback and, ran pretty well and that kind of stuff. But, I go to training camp and I'm not going to look anything special. And, I'm on, first or second cut, I'm on my way. And, but the other thing is that when I went to training camp, we only had 2 quarterbacks. It was Virgil Carter and myself. So I got half of all the practice snaps. I played half of every preseason game, which for a rookie, quarterback especially, I mean, that gave me the experience to kind of go on and got stuff to where, I knew quickly, how to improve. I mean, I remember we went down to our first preseason game. It was against the Dolphins at the old Orange Bowl. And I'm looking around. I said, God, that wasn't a sold out crowd. I said, there's more people here for one game that saw me in my entire career at Augustana. But I remember I go in and I'm on the sideline and I'm, and Paul Brown, he always had the plays. He said we had like 19 Bob called a little sweep, 2-back sweep to the left. He goes, Don't tell anybody, you keep it. And so I did, and I get around and I got a little running room, and I make about 10 yards and the safety hit me high and the corner hit me low. And I go, oh, and off the sideline, so Paul Brown says, you're supposed to run out of bounds. I said, I didn't know that.
Oh man, I'm telling you, when you look at Paul Brown, just legendary, obviously, maybe the greatest coach that ever coached in football at any level, and of course the highest level, the National Football League. Bill Walsh had a creative mind as I've ever seen, I've ever been exposed to, in terms of the passing game and all the nuances of it. When you first experienced those guys in meetings, and Paul obviously wasn't in the meetings, but Bill Walsh, the way he could teach, the way he could make adjustments and create, new offense that had to be created or whatever. What went through your mind? What did you think about Bill Walsh when you first were exposed to him?
Well, I mean, that was before he was the genius, but I remember but he was, basically a teacher. And the way that he drew things up on the blackboard, there were no whiteboards then. It was the old chalk and a blackboard and going over it and where it made sense. And, the West Coast offense, as much as the plays was the organizational system that went with it. How you called your formations, how you called the run play, the pass protection, how then, translated into the pass route. It was all a system that put together that made sense to me. And so I think that was a big help to me. And, as far as Paul, I don't think that any player gets to know him real well while you're playing. He's always a little bit, aloof and never raised his voice. But, when you're, going in for the film breakdown after a game and he comes to you and says, well, Anderson, looks like this game may be a little too big for you. Maybe it's time to find your life's work. And you go, oh, God,
Oh, man, the life's work. That kid.
Oh, gosh. So, but it was, getting to know him after, playing, he was a nice guy and he was a funny guy. And in fact, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Brown's Town. And it about a lot of these old Cleveland Browns that played for him now going back and talking about those days. So that's been kind of interesting. And the same stories that I remembered, that they're telling the same stories about Paul Brown back then.
Yep. My Paul Brown experience was rookie year. I'm on it's a preseason game, and I'm on the field goal extra point team. And man, I'll tell you, we're working against Cleveland. Remember, we played Cleveland in the preseason as well in the regular season.
Oh, well, we opened up the preseason with at Ohio State Stadium.
Yeah,
I got to play in a sold out horseshoe at the Buckeye Stadium my rookie year.
It's crazy. So we would play against them, and the starters would play. I mean, you're going against starters, and so I'm a young buck and going up playing some in a rotation. Tigers got me in a rotation, but he says, you're on the extra point field goal team at right guard. And Walter Johnson, big old bear, Walter Johnson with the Cleveland Browns. He hits me on one shoulder. Jerry Shirk, the other tackle, both like Pro Bowl type guys. They both hit me and boom. And I feel like, oh no, I'm going up, man. I'm trying to get my feet back on the ground. Back of my head hits the ground. The extra point was good, fortunately, but I'm thinking, oh boy, this is not going to be pretty, and, so films, how you always would watch special teams as a whole team, so the whole team were watching all the offenses, watching field goal, extra point, punt team, all that stuff. And here it comes. And I'm like, oh man, I'm trying to like squirm under my desk, and it comes up and man, it looked bad. Looked as bad as I thought. I was like, I'm up and I'm like, boom, on the back of my head. And all of a sudden there he is on my shoulder. You look like a cat that got run over by a truck. I'm like, man, you could have at least said a dog. It's like, cat. But I mean, and he goes, we can't have that, young man, ever. If that happens again, you're gone. Give me your shoulder pads, your helmet, turn your stuff in. You're gone. You're done. And I'll get you to the airport and fly you to wherever you need to go, but you're never coming back here again. I'm like, holy.
What? No, it was. And when we were in training camp in Wilmington, that getting you to the airport meant taking you to the Greyhound station and putting you on a bus to the airport.
True.
You didn't get a ride to the airport.
That's true. Oh man, but you talk about making a point, just in impacting a young rookie. I was like, oh my gosh, man. When he was doing that, when he was like on my ear, on my shoulder, I was puckered up so tight you couldn't pull a pin out of my butt with a tractor, man. I'm thinking, oh, this is it. I'm gone. I'm thinking he might not even give me a second chance. I might be gone right now because of that one play. Man, but he did. He gave me a second chance. Oh man. Those were the days, man. I'm telling you. And he was a man of few words, but every word he spoke was significant. It had meaning. I mean, he was as good choosing his words as anybody I've ever been around. It was incredible. He wasted none of them. None of them.
No, and then the other thing I thought he was good at was he was a good judge of talent. He was a good judge of when that talent was on the downside. And the other thing that always impressed me too is he hired good coaches and let them do their job. He didn't try to micromanage, our coaches, and and let them do that. And we had great coaches, great teachers. I mean, Tiger Johnson, one of the great line coaches of all time.
Yeah.
That we were very fortunate to have on our team. With Bill Walsh, and then you guys like Chuck Studley, Vince Costello, Mike McCormick on defense. I mean, we had an all-star list of assistant coaches that were great teachers.
No doubt. And I think the key there is Paul was so highly regarded and respected that he could attract those kind of coaches. Everybody wanted to coach with Paul Brown because Paul Brown, in the old AAFL, he won every single year. I mean, he didn't lose a game hardly in that league. And he comes to the NFL and he wins, the National Football League championship. So it's like, whoa, this guy's real. This guy's legit. And his winning percentage, the number of games he won and his winning percentage is remarkable. It's incredible.
Well, his quarterback, Otto Graham, played 10 years in the National Football, or in the 10 years of professional football
right.
between the AAFL and the National. Got to the last game of the year 10 times and won 7.
Unbelievable.
That's amazing.
That is. And he is a great player, no question about it. But I mean, honestly, Kenny Anderson's skill and talent, I'll put that in a bet. Otto Graham, Ken Anderson, side by side, throwing the football. I know who I'm taking. I'm taking Ken Anderson in terms of throwing the ball to all quadrants of the field accurately with zip on it and everything else. I mean, Otto Graham was a good player, a good athlete. He played, I think he played Major League Baseball too, didn't he? I mean,
they played professional basketball.
Basketball. He was a hoop guy. That's right. Backcourt guy. So, I mean, obviously great talent, great athlete, but I think you could have played hoop at a very high level as well. I mean, you were a really good basketball player. You played with Dan Issel. I mean, you guys dominated high school basketball. You were a hell of a player. So, I mean, it's like the skill set and everything is good, but I think Paul's a difference maker, man. I mean, Paul takes good players, makes them great, takes great players and makes them unbelievable.
Well, I mean, and he was the first one to understand, I think, the attention span of players. And our practices were not long, but they were crisp. I mean, he knew that after a certain period of time, the players lose, I don't want to say lose interest, but they're not learning anymore. So he always kind of cut it off then. And, it was, like I say, everything moved along at a crisp pace because that's how we wanted it.
Yeah. I mean, he actually studied, some kind of a, human study, brain study or whatever on the attention span and the focus of the average human being and how long is that and all that. I mean, because he left no stone unturned. I mean, this guy was, above and beyond in terms of detail, preparation, anything that he could find to get an edge. He was the master at somehow getting an edge. And he was incredibly bright, man. He was a genius basically himself. I think the dude was Mensa. And he always seemed, I think he went into every game thinking, as far as the other coach is concerned, I'm smarter than you. I'm more prepared than you. We're going to win this football game. I mean, that basically was his mantra. And he wanted his players to be that way, right?
Yeah. But, the one thing he wasn't good at, Dave, was picking out movies. When we were on the road, we always had to go see a movie. He'd run out of theater. We always see a movie, and a lot of the movies we saw were not very good.
No.
So,
you're right. You're right. Everybody has a fault somewhere, right?
Well,
So that was PB's.
Yeah. Well,
So-
luckily, not all the coaching staff was on the bus, and so every once in a while, if it's a bad movie, just sneak out the back, and if there's a bar next door, go have a beer and be back in time to catch the bus going back to the hotel.
So let's go back to the early years with the Cincinnati Bengals. Paul Brown's the head coach, and his two sons, Pete and Mike, are scouts, basically. And they, as far as in the 1974, these all-star games or whatever, 73, the end of the beginning of the 74 year, end of 73 football season, East-West Shrine game, Hula Bowl, Senior Bowl, all those kind of games. Mike and Pete were the two that were basically the faces of the Cincinnati Bengals. Those were the first two people that I met as far as Cincinnati Bengals were concerned. And Pete was the first one, the late, great Pete Brown. And he was a heck of a scout now. I mean, Pete knew what he was doing. When you talk to Pete about football, it's like, ooh, this dude, he's got it going on. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's looking at. I was very impressed with him. And he really was responsible for, I know he was very involved with you. You met Pete Brown very early in your college career, didn't you?
Well, I actually didn't meet him. He was the first one that scouted me, though. He was actually my senior year. He was at a Notre Dame game in the afternoon, and we were playing Valparaiso, in Valparaiso, Indiana, which wasn't far away, at night. And so he went from one game to the other and wrote the first scouting report on me. And then Mike actually came out to Rock Island and watched me play. And Bill Walsh came. In those days, our coaches went out and scouted on Saturdays.
Oh, yeah.
And he saw me in Waukesha, Wisconsin against Carroll College. And when the Bengals were playing in Cleveland that night, and I, early in the game, I took a helmet right in the butt. Oh God! But I kept playing. That was the thing that impressed him. He said, at that level, he said most kids they're cashing it in, but he kept playing. So you just never know.
Toughed it out, man. Ken Anderson showing the toughness right away. Early on in his athletic career. It's the life of of somebody that has to do that, like you say. Going to Notre Dame for one game, another game at night. I mean, these guys are on the road. Are they going to get 3 square meals in a day? Maybe not necessarily. They're away from their families. It's a heck of a sacrifice to unearth the best talent you possibly can for your organization. I mean, because it's competitive. Everybody's doing it, and if you can find like a Ken Anderson, if you can determine that Ken Anderson is a guy that if we draft him, and we draft him in the 3rd round is where we draft him, there's no question that this guy is going to have, in our estimation, he's going to have a brilliant National Football League career. That's sometimes that's tough to project. That's tough to do. And they put their bat on the ball. You look at a lot of guys, Bob Trumpy. Trump was in a situation where, he was a bill collector. He was out of sports for a while, and you bring him to the Cincinnati Bengals, and look what he does in his career. And then the other end of it, Bob Johnson, very highly acclaimed center for the Tennessee Volunteers. Paul Brown says this the kind of guy that I have to have as a leader in the locker room, not just with the offensive line, but the entire locker. I'm taking him with the first pick of the draft. They knew what they were doing, didn't they?
Oh no, they did, and back in those days, you had to go to the school to look at film. I mean, you could go watch a game, but I mean, there was no. Colleges didn't send film to the pros for them to look at and evaluate your players, and it's not like today where it's all I got to do is punch up on a computer and I can watch any college game that I want now,
right?
Or any NFL game that you want. I mean, you had to go there to look at the film, and I remember I don't know where I heard this story, but when the Bengals drafted me number 3, that Carol Rosenblum was the owner of the Baltimore Colts back then. And when they found out that the Bengals drafted this quarterback from Augustana College in the 3rd round, he went ballistic because nobody there knew anything about me. So how can they take a quarterback in the 3rd round and we don't know? And
wow.
but that's what scouting back then.
Yeah, that says a lot. I mean, boy, for the that says a lot about the Cincinnati Bengals ability to scour everything and be totally prepared. And not just not the Baltimore Colts at that time, not just Baltimore, but other franchises in the NFL. They didn't put in the time and the work that the Bengals were in terms of scouting and going to these campuses and meeting these players and giving these players these tests and evaluating the mental capacity as well as the physical capacity of these players. And I think honestly that the due diligence of all that was the secret to Paul Brown's success. I mean, I think he was always ahead of the game somehow. He'd always figure out a way to get ahead of the game. But I thought that put him ahead of the game very early in his coaching career.
Well, you talk about the scouts. There was no combine in those days. And the draft was in January. I mean, the season's over, and then 3 weeks later, you've got your draft. So there was, a lot went into going out on the road in the off season and going and working out players as well.
Yep, no doubt. All right, so we've reminisced about a lot of things about the Cincinnati Bengals and your career and teammates and coaches and everything. Let's talk about Ken Anderson. All right, and some of this stuff we have talked about. Got to get the glasses on, make sure that I don't miss out on anything. Oh, one thing that we do need to talk about. When you were done playing, a couple of things. When you're done playing, get into the broadcast world. You did that for 6 years. Outstanding analyst for football games on radio. We were working together in that regard, and then you got into the coaching end of it for a good number of years. 9 years with the Cincinnati Bengals, 4 years with Jacksonville, 3 years with Pittsburgh. You win Super Bowl 53 in Pittsburgh. You were involved in all 3 Super Bowls here in Cincinnati. So you went to 4 Super Bowls as a player and a coach. But let's talk about the coaching side of it. What got you into coaching? What made you decide I want to commit myself to the coaching world?
Well, we talked earlier that, I always wanted to be a teacher and a coach, when I went to college, and, didn't go into coaching right away and, had opportunities, and everybody said, oh man, you don't want to do that. You're stupid to want to go into coaching. All the hours that they put in, I mean, you don't want to do that. And I didn't want to be stupid. So I didn't. So I went in and worked for a radio and television station and, found out I really wasn't all that good at it. Although it would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. Well, I ended up. It was fun doing the radio games, and that was the highlight. We got to do. You and I got to work with Phil Sam, among others, to do the games on radio. But they ended up, and I became the sports anchor at Channel 12, and that was not me. And but right at the time I was getting ready to start, they had the show Inside the NFL with Lenny Dawson and Nick Bonacani. And I get a call that they wanted to add a third person, and they wanted me to do it. And our news director at Channel 12 would not let me do it.
Wow.
And so that's right then I knew that this is maybe not for me. So as we're going around that fall doing our games, I'm on the, before game, I'm talking to other people, other coaches, I like to get into coaching. So I'm trying to line up a job, during that season, because I knew being a sports anchor wasn't it.
So if they had allowed you to go do that show with Bonacani and Lenny Dawson, I know you would have done unbelievably well at it. You probably would have gotten into some big national, broadcasting job or something like that. It's funny how, your things like that determine what path you end up going down. If there's a detour, you go to another way or whatever. But because I think you could have been as good as anybody. Lenny Dawson, Nick Bonacani, you name a guy, Kenny Anderson could have been as good as any of them. But the fact that they wouldn't let you do it, a local station would not let you go to a national opportunity.
Well, I think it was a little short-sighted. Imagine the attention that would have brought to the station.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'm glad because I love coaching. That was
good.
And
good at it.
And
players loved you, man. Loved you.
We didn't have a lot of success in Cincinnati. We didn't have a lot of real good players back then either.
Right.
And but I enjoyed my time coaching. Got to work with a bunch of great people, and and end up in Pittsburgh. I caught a little heat for that every once in a while, but I said, I was not the one that asked to leave Cincinnati. But Mike Tomlin was a great guy to work for, and Bruce Arians was the offensive coordinator, and Dick LeBeau was there on defense, and Ray Horton, who was a teammate of ours, was on the defense. So I knew some people, and it was amazing how similar Pittsburgh, not only the cities but the organizations, were similar going there. And the Rooney family really, welcomed me, and we enjoyed our 3 years there.
The Rooney family, the Brown family, family-run organizations. There were so many similarities there that you were used to dealing with, and plus you got the ring, man. You got the Super Bowl 53 ring. That's something that's what everybody plays the game for, is to win the big one. And you had an opportunity to go to Pittsburgh and get that done, man. That was probably the icing on the cake in terms of a career, not only a great career as a player, but as a broadcaster, coach. And then you end up winning a Super Bowl, as a coach. That's icing on the cake, man.
Yeah, I got to remember where the ring is now. It doesn't ever come out in Cincinnati. I must say that. So I still know my place, and I'm not going to flaunt it in Cincinnati.
So you got it in a nice case in a trophy room somewhere.
Is it in my underwear drawer? I'm not really sure, but it's hidden away somewhere.
Oh, that's great. Oh man. All right, let's talk about some of your other awards. In 82, we talked about 74. 81, obviously, you were MVP for the Cincinnati Bengals, and you won the Burt Bell Award as well. In 82, though, the year after the Super Bowl season, 70.6% completion percentage. 27 years that completion percentage record stood till Drew Brees broke it in 2009. When a record stands for 27 years, that's a special thing. To complete over 70% of your passes, not in a game, not in a quarter, not in a half, talking about in a full season of NFL games against an NFL schedule with NFL players, to complete 70%, 70.6%. Man, that's crazy. That's crazy, K.A.
Well, and that was a strike-shortened year, so we only played 9 games. We were, 7-2, and and the thing, I remember, back at that time is how devastated we were the year before when we got beat in the Super Bowl, but we knew we had everybody coming back. We knew we had a good team, and we're going back again, and we still tied for the best record in the league. We had a home playoff game, and then to lose that playoff game and have your season over, that's a feeling that it's just really hard to get over.
Yeah, it's a pit in the stomach, isn't it? I mean, it just kind of lingers, kind of stays. But okay, 16 years as a quarterback in the National Football League, 4 Pro Bowls, MVP in 81, like we talked about, All Pro in 75, 76, 81, and 82. Passing yardage leader in 74 and 75. Completion percentage leader in 74, 82, and 83. Passer rating leader in 74, 75, 81, and 82. Back-to-back years, 2 different decades, you're the passing rating leader in the National Football League. That's everything. That's the formula or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what the formula is, but it encompasses everything. It encompasses your completion percentage, your yardage, your touchdowns to interception ratio, all these things. Win that thing 4 times, back-to-back years in 2 different decades, showing longevity of a career of excellence, because 74 and 75, that's the middle of that decade. 81 and 82, we're talking a span there of a few years where a lot of quarterbacks, they decline or fall off a cliff. You stayed at that level of excellence for a long period of time. What was your secret?
Well, I think good players and good coaching. I mean, if you remember, back in when Tiger left during the 78 season, we had a big dip down in 79, and we were not very good. And of course, Forrest Greg came in 1980.
Right.
But we had a start of the line, but all of a sudden, and I believe it was 79. Here comes Max Montoya. The next year we get Anthony Munoz and Chris Collinsworth and some of those guys. So all of a sudden the talent level picked up again.
Yep.
But I think more than else, we had another innovative coordinator, Lindy Infante. Vastly underrated. I mean, we were the first ones to do the quarterback nakeds, out there. And we caught a lot of people by surprise that year with that. We were the first one to do a lot of option routes. Gave receivers option, and Danny Ross, it was so great running that Y option and just off of technique. And, you've got to be on the same page, with your quarterback and everything. And so we did a lot of different things, back then that I think, helped my career. And, I remember, Lindy and I getting together that first off season and watching some of the old films and then some of the current stuff. And it's just amazing. You get in bad habits sometimes. And we kind of started straightening out some of those things and then had another couple pretty good years.
No doubt about it. Dominant years. And I remember Lindy too, with his protections. 60 protection was a big deal. It was something. Oh man, this is different. This is new. We had double mollies. We had those installed a little bit before. I think Mike McCormick was involved with that. Where in Boyd Dollar, where we'd check inside to outside linebackers. If you're uncovered as a guard, they were played odd front. Like a 34 defense, nose guard, 2 defensive ends, 2 inside linebackers, 2 outside backers, a 3-4 scheme. Both guards would check the inside backer. If he didn't blitz, check outside. If they didn't blitz, help or whatever. So we had that. But then we did where 60 protection, slide to the weak side, slide away from the tight end, weak side slide protection, but strong side guard would double check, just like in the molly, would molly the inside linebacker to outside linebacker. So Lindy was progressive in his thinking with protections as well, because that 60 protection, it took a while for people to catch up with it. We did some damage with that, and obviously, like you say, all the route combinations associated with it and the option routes, and D. Ross killing people with the option route, and Isaac Curtis running by people, and Charlie Joyner, hurting people with his ability to run. I mean, we had a crew, man. We had a lot of hella hellacious players.
Well, you remember in 81, Collinsworth comes.
Yep.
And he was a 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie, went to the Pro Bowl, as a rookie.
Yep.
So, no, but like I say, we were, you win because you've got, good players. And I was very fortunate for a lot of years to be with a lot of good players. And I think, more than being good players, players that you really liked and liked to hang around with. And I think that's what kind of made us unique.
I agree, Kenny. I think all the teams that we played on were close, but I guess it's human nature. The teams that enjoyed success, closeness even became, a bigger part of that. It's like when you do well together, it just tightens that bond, And those 2 teams, the Super Bowl team, the 74 team that played so well, 75 team that played so well. Those guys will always have a spot in your heart as a teammate that's unique. Those bonds, the sacrifices that you have to make individually and collectively for the betterment of the team are what makes football so great. And it's why players become so close, not just on the football field, but off the football field, in the locker room, in the community, wherever.
No, and that's what's so much fun, that they had the 50th honor, the 50th the top 50 players for the Bengals 50th year, whatever it was. Then the Ring of Honor, we get a lot of guys, even though they may not be in the Ring of Honor, we get a lot of guys that come back. And it was an offensive line reunion up in Canton when Jimmy McNally went into their Hall of Excellence. And it's just, but like I say, and it was fun for me to be with all those guys in the offensive line. Even some of them I didn't play with, but I know very well from being in different golf outings, and it's always fun when we're together. And
that's 2 honors, Ring of Honor for you, Kenny Anderson, 50th anniversary team. Those are 2 honors that I skipped over as I was going over all your numbers, all your numbers that you completion percentage, yards, and all that you accumulated. Your there's not another actually with the Cincinnati Bengals that are on the 50th anniversary team and in the Ring of Honor. Oh, Anthony Munoz. You and Anthony are the only two that are on the 50th anniversary team and in the Ring of Honor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, so there's another feather in your cap, my man. You're a highly acclaimed, highly honored ball player, and it's an honor to say that dude was my roommate, man. So we did have some fun. I mean, it was it was interesting rooming together. I will say though that you're the challenge that you presented with making sure that you got a proper amount of rest the night before the game was an interesting one. Tell us about that.
Well, it's amazing what a couple of Valium and a couple of beers will do, Dave. And then that got me about 4 or 5 good hours. And so other than that, then you start thinking about the game plan. And at least I would go and take the game plan, go into the John and put the toilet seat down, and I would close the door so I didn't disturb you too much.
No, you're exactly right. You never did wake me up, but I mean, it was amazing to you were so prepared. And part of it was, I mean, you had your nose in the playbook, I mean, it's no secret when a high level performance, there's a bunch of preparation that goes into it. You just don't roll out there and play to the level that you played. I mean, you studied, man. You studied the game. You studied the opponent. You studied situations. You studied tendencies. You studied everything. And I remember watching you study that game plan, man, the night before the game, one final time. And then we'd come up, and say, okay, ask me some stuff. Give me some questions. And, man, you'd be rattling that stuff off. And I'm feeling really good. I'm like, dude, this guy got it down. We're going to be good tomorrow, baby. So, I mean, that part of it, where did that come from? Where did that mindset of I have to be prepared better than anybody?
I don't know. I mean, I think it goes back to your dad. If you're going to do something, do it right, and I just, like I say, it's, I didn't want to let you guys down. I mean, I wanted to make sure that I could play it as high level as I could, for my teammates. And, like I say, we talked about that before, that was one of the really fun things is the closeness that we had as a team with the self-accountability we had as a team. And, like I say, it was just a great era to be in the NFL.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Speaking for the rest of your teammates, you never let us down, bro. You always played at an extremely high level. And the other thing that I want to ask you about, your leadership was always front and center. And you were not – you were not what I would say, like a brimstone, fiery, hit you across the side of the head, punch you in the chest. You did though. I mean, you were fiery when you had to be fiery, on the football field, on the practice field, whatever. You were fiery and corrected people when they needed to be corrected, and you did it very effectively, and were no nonsense about it. There's no question about that. But you were more of a poised, composed leader. Where did your leadership style come from?
I don't know. I think, certainly it's not from playing at a small level of college or a small high school. I don't know. But I just always, I think it was more of a leader by example that, you're going to see me working hard and, I expect you to work just as hard as I am. And, and I think that's, we had a lot of leaders like that on our team. So, I remember Trumpy, if he did something wrong in the huddle, it wasn't always, yelling and screaming, but he said, oh shit, I'm in trouble. He gave me the hairy eyeball look.
That's true. That's true. You didn't want to get the look. You didn't want to get the look. I mean, you'd rather get chewed out by Kenny Anderson, and made an example of in front of your teammate, rather than get the look. You get the look, you're in trouble, man. You're in the dog house, and you might be in there for a long time. That's great, Trumpy. He's a classic, man. Oh. He really is. And when you look at it, that's the thing. Like we talked about, a lot of us haven't played for a long time, but we can get together and sit around, a couple drinks, and just talk about games like it was yesterday and tell stories like we were together like it was yesterday. And I think that's maybe the biggest, I don't know, benefit of playing together in the National Football League with guys that you love like family. I mean, you become as close as families become. I think that's one of the things that the NFL has to offer for players that is incredible.
Well, I mean, it's the ultimate team sport. I mean, you've got so many guys, and each one's got a job to do, and it's the most physical sport that there is. And it's just that there's so many things that when you're out there sweating and going through pain together, that brings you closer sometimes as well.
The National Football League, I think, is the greatest sport in the world. I think that the numbers, the popularity of the sport, the numbers of the sport in terms of viewership, followers, and all that sort of thing is proof in the pudding. And,
well, I mean, wasn't it, that you look at ratings and of the top 100 shows every year, 90 of them are always NFL games.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's almost like life in a 60-minute time frame. I mean, the ups and downs. You have to deal with adversity, and handle success the right way. Don't get too big-headed if it's going well, and if it's going poorly, you have to be able to bounce back. You have to be able to pick yourself up off the ground and compete. And I think fans, identify with that. I think they say, I can see, that it's a day in the life as such when they watch football.
And what do we have to do today? Is today a day we got to go out and run the ball and control it because they've got a pretty good offense, or do we got to be a little bit more wide open? How many times do we see, Casanova or Lamar Parrish run a punt back to totally change the complexion of a game? Jimmy Breach making, a big kick to kind of turn things around. It's just, you have got to complement each other. But like I say, when, it started off only 40 in the locker room at a time, now it's 53. But, it's everybody's got a role to play. And you're responsible to get that role done to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. And finally, Kenny, let's talk about the mentality that it takes to play the game at the highest level and as successfully as you did at the quarterback position. I know what it was like trying to diagnose all these different fronts and shifts and change of strength, movements they'd make based on the change of strength and formation or motion and things of that nature. I know the complexity, that we had as offensive linemen, how you go to the line of scrimmage and with the same play you could do three different things. You could block down, you could pull, you could reach, you could block straight ahead. Four different scenarios based on what the defense dictated what you had to adjust to do to run your play successfully. I can't imagine what it was like at the quarterback position. Everything that you had to sift through and diagnose and be able to read quickly and make instantaneous decisions. And I mean, these coordinators, 11 people doing everything they can do with 11 people. I mean, are you kidding me? All the different coverages and blitzes. And my God, I don't know how the hell you were able to decipher it all.
Well, I mean, that's the challenge of it. And that's why, you looked at film, and that's why, you studied. And I still got my, back in those days, the players now have their laptops they take home. They watch everything. And I was still taking home the 16 millimeter tapes, and I still got my own 16 millimeter projector down in the basement. I don't know where my splicing machine went. That's the first thing they taught you. If the film broke, how you're going to put it back together. But, a lot of hours just spent looking at it. And I think that's why, the quarterback that we have now, Joe Burrow, is so successful, is because of the way that he prepares. And again, you talk about he leaves no stone unturned. I mean, he's ready for every situation. And that's what you have to be as a quarterback, and you've got to anticipate what's going to happen.
I see a lot of similarities between you two guys. I might be prejudiced and all that. I mean, because I know the great the greatness of Ken Anderson as a player, and I know how hard you worked at becoming a great player. I've seen Joe Burrow's greatness, and I've seen with documentaries and all that how hard he worked become that great player. So I see a lot of similarities in you guys, and it's kind of like, smaller town guys that have real close friends that they're still close with from their high school days. They still, get together with. They haven't forgotten where they came from. They haven't become too big for their britches, and they're great leaders, of their football team as a result of that. And everybody on that football team would give everything they possibly can to win football games and to make sure that quarterback is able to compete at the highest level that he is able to compete at. And both you and Joe Burrow, you guys, man, you're the best of the best. You guys are one of one. There's not a whole lot of people in the history of the NFL that have done what you guys have done at the quarterback position any better than the two of you have done it.
Well, like I say, thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. But, I think, players, every era get better and better. And, and Joe has just done an outstanding job. And, and I think that the thing with him is he'll be better yet. And, like I say, I think we've got the core of the team together now getting, Jamar and T, signed, and Gesicki. I think they're going to be pretty good there. I'm excited to see what the new offensive line coach does with some of our new offensive linemen to make that better. I think he's got some unusual, teaching techniques as far as using your hands and that. Let's see if that kind of pays off. And, what we're going. So I'm just excited to see this. And like I say, I'm a firm believer that we got the right guy to lead them in Zach Taylor.
I agree with that.
And so I think he's got some good coaches to work with, but I think the team responds to him. I think he's, the locker room listens to him. I think he listens to the locker room as well. But I think he's an outstanding coach, and so I'm excited for this season.
I agree. I think, they made some changes in the coaching staff as well, both offensively and defensively, and predominantly up front. The offensive and defensive line have some coaches. Jerry Montgomery, defensive line coach, he's got an assistant, and then Scott Peters, offensive line coach, has one as well. To the point that you referenced with Scott, and as a former lineman, I'm excited to see how the guys adjust and adapt to the techniques and fundamentals that he's teaching them in terms of the jiu-jitsu stuff, the leverage, the long arm. It makes a lot of sense, man. It makes a lot of sense, and he's a very, very bright coach. He has a different way of from a technique and fundamental standpoint of breaking defensive linemen down, but he teaches it so effectively. His players are pumped up about it, and all they're looking for is more tools for the toolbox. He's going to give them a few more tools.
Yeah. So, what I was saying? We've been telling all these stories, Dave, that we're going to I'll come pick you up one of these days. We'll take a trip out to Wilmington, see if the airport bowl is still there. I don't know. Gosh, since they left Wilmington, for training camp, I don't know if I've ever been back, but maybe we got to go see if the airport bowl is still there.
Oh man, if it is, they should have made a shrine for Ken Anderson somewhere. It's like you had a few cold ones there, my man.
Oh gosh, and then we had, what was the upstairs place that we used to go after practice? The Stratosphere.
Oh
yes. God, yeah.
Stratosphere.
So, it was we had some times there, but like I say, that's as much as the memories, that we had, and the one year we had our putt golf league going on in the hallways of the dorm, and you got to kill time somehow, and God, we had course records and scorecards, and used to drive PB crazy because they had the linoleum floors. We got golf balls rolling on those, and they got the coaches meetings going on downstairs. So it was
the things there's a lot of dead time up there, and you have to find things to entertain yourself. We're creative. pretty creative
yeah.
in that regard, man.
Well, yeah, and then I was never a card player, so I mean, I never got into poker
Right.
games that went
Right.
down on the one
Bourrée.
room, but
Little bourrée.
yeah. So it was, but like I say, it's just those are the times that that mean as much to anything. And I remember the one time, guy Danny Ross was in the room next to me, and I hear him at bed check going to go to the bathroom. And I go and I get under his bed. And I'm waiting for him. You hear the deep breathing, and I just reached up and I gave him the claw across the neck, and I think he hit the ceiling with that.
He did.
So anyways, a couple days later, we had all these farm kids, that work training camp, and I come back from dinner, and there's this crowd around my room, and I'm going, "What's going on here?" And I go in, and they brought this piglet in. And now they're trying to get him out, and it goes under the bed. They can't get him out, and it goes number 2 everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, and the smell of that room. I mean, it took a month for that thing to smell to get out of there.
I remember saying, Danny, I know KA scared the crap out of you, but to retaliate with pig crap all over his room, man, that's cool, bro.
Oh boy.
Oh, those are the days. Great memories. Great teammates, great teams, great coaches. Just, when you think about it, KA, can you believe that we actually played in the National Football League for as long as we did?
No. I mean, when you go down to Paycor Stadium now, and you're still up in the broadcast booth with doing that, and you watch games on TV and you see the way it's played, and you go, did we actually do that?
No.
And won games doing that. We weren't too bad, I guess.
No question. We were damn good. Some years we were really good. We were as good as anybody. Great memories. Great friends. I'll tell you. And you're the best, Kenny Anderson. You're as good a friend as there is, and you're as good not only as good a quarterback as ever played the game. You're as fine a human being as walked God's green earth, my man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and like I say, I've valued your friendship for a lot of years. I'm still glad that we can help each other out.
Ditto, my man. You're the best. Dave Lapham here. While games are over for the season, there's no off-season for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham or First Star Logistics. First Star Logistics gave away great prizes during the season, which will continue with exclusive content in the First Star Media Group YouTube channel. So please, do me a favor. Subscribe to In the Trenches, hit the like button, and visit the First Star Media Group YouTube channel for exclusive content and special giveaways.